Hello, welcome to Dorothy's Lockdown Diaries Day 3. Back in the speed shop today. I just want to do a quick video on bike choices. I know it seems to overwhelm some people and they tie themselves in knots trying to decide which is and which isn't the right bike. So I've just got a couple of bikes out here and I just want to run through why they suited me at different points and times and for different trips. So starting first and foremost, we've got Dorothy, the Aussie bike that I rode back from Australia on. People say, why that bike? Why would you ride across the world on that bike? Well, the reality is that they're cheap, simple, reliable and robust. And they're kind of the main ingredients when you're in the middle of nowhere, reliant on yourself, and you want a bike that's going to start day in, day out, get you to where you're going, and not cause you much trouble. The beauty of a bike like that is easy to get tyres everywhere in the world. They're just a standard 17-inch size. So every scooter in Indonesia and India and Thailand uses the same tyre size. Oil, it was easy to get a litre of oil anywhere you went. Valve checks. When I set off, I didn't know how to do a valve check, and so I used to write down the measurements for each valve and then pass it to a mechanic, and they would set it for me for a couple of quid. And again, so that is the beauty of a bike like that. Yes, they are slow, and you have to get into a different frame of mind for travelling long distance. I could still do 300, 400 miles a day if I really wanted to. It'd just mean getting up earlier, riding longer, having shorter breaks, and just being focused and disciplined. So I think it takes a very different mindset. But, that bike, it enabled me to do a trip that I otherwise wouldn't have been able to afford or go on. The bike cost me, $2,000 or so it's £1,500, which reduced the cost of the carnet, which reduced the cost of the shipping, which reduced the cost of parts and maintenance, and it just enabled me to make that trip. Would I go around the world on one tomorrow? Probably not, but I think they do have a real virtue, this sort of bike, this light bike, and I think even just the weight of it, I've just been moving it around. I dropped it, bringing it in here today. I was opening the gate and it fell off the side stand and it fell over on its side, and I picked it up without even thinking about it. One-handed, pick it up, back on its side stand. And you compare that to the KTM 390 that I used in the video the other day to pick up a bike. That's on paper only sort of 50, 60 kilos difference in weight. But the difference in picking that up versus a postie is light and day. Anyone can pick this up. It's never going to be intimidating. You're never going to be frightened about dropping it. You're never going to be frightened of exploring a back lane on it or going off in the boondocks to do some wild camping. It's just a perfect adventure enabling bike. Whereas even that KTM 390, as light as it is, would still be intimidating if you were trying to get really off off the beaten track. Certainly if you were travelling solo. So I think there's a real merit for this small bike. I think the new postie bike, the CT125 with the slightly faster engine in that can cruise at say 55 miles an hour, is going to be perfect. It's going to be a perfect exploration discovery bike. Please Honda, please bring it into the UK, because I think it would take people many places they otherwise wouldn't have gone. Moving on to the next bike, which in this case is represented by a Moto Guzzi V8 5TT. Now, in the past, I've owned GS 1200 and I rode it across America. I got married with my wife on a coast-to-coast America trip. We went two up, Las Vegas to New York, 6 weeks with all our gear, panniers loaded up, tank bag loaded up, big heavy bike, cruise control, heated grips, electronic suspension, and that bike was absolutely perfect for that trip, just as the Guzzi would be. The Guzzi's not had as much use as I would have liked simply because of COVID. I bought it to guide a coast-to-coast America trip in 2020 that has been postponed to 2021, to this year. So hopefully that can still go ahead. But this large capacity adventure bike has taken off in the last 10 years. It's proved the perfect recipe for a lot of people who like the comfortable seating position. They like the fact that they can carry a lot of luggage. They like the fact that they're not slumped over the tank like they would be on a sports tourer, that their partner, girlfriend, wife, husband can ride on the back in relative comfort, and that they've got enough power to get people where they're going fast. I think where they fall down and where I found the limitations of something like the GS 1200 was when I went around Iceland on it. When I wanted to get off the beaten track and explore in Iceland, I felt very restricted by the weight of the bike. I was very conscious that if I dropped it in a river or stream, then I could get into difficulty. You consider the issue of broken components or broken body parts from it if you fall off. And so there's a point at which a big bike like this starts to disable your ability to adventure. And I think you've got to be very conscious of that when you start deciding on this bike for your trip. And I've seen it myself, people who come on a trip, even UK camping trip, and they bought a big bike and they can't physically manhandle it, or it's an intimidating bike to manhandle. And then it makes them nervous and worried that they're going to drop it and they're not going to be able to pick it up, and then that plays in the back of their mind, and I think it makes people nervous. And I think you've just got to be realistic about your abilities, your strengths, and maybe decide that a big bike isn't the one for you. That's not to say they're not a great bike. The big bikes, they are great. They can do great things in the right hands, but they can be hazardous. I think there's no easy way of saying it. And so when you see people on demonstration videos showing how easy it is to spin turn a GS 1200, or how a 5'2" woman can pick one up on her own, you think, well, that's all well and good, but there's a big difference between doing that in a controlled environment and doing it out on your own in the middle of a forest when you've gone out wild camping and the road's turned to a dirt track and you have to turn it round. There's a big difference. And so I think, we've got to be very realistic that this kind of bike has great potential, but it also has great possibility of getting you into trouble. And that's kind of why I've sort of found myself migrating towards this third option, which in this instance is represented by a Royal Enfield, but you could replace that with a CB500X or a CRF 250 or even a V-Strom 650, or the KTM 390 or the 310 GS. And what I just like is the sort of perfect balance that this type of bike strikes between the big bike and the small bike. It's not got the slow speed and the big frustration of a slow speed that those bikes have. You can get somewhere that little bit quicker. You can go on the motorway. You can cover ground quickly if you just need to get somewhere. You can carry luggage. You can even carry a pillion if you need to. I met a couple travelling from, I think it was France to Turkey, to up on a Himalayan in the Alps last year. And they were having no problems at all. I've took a Himalayan across America, and yes, it was a little bit slow on the interstate and on the motorway, but for the rest of the riding, it was perfectly fine. I think the difficulty with a bike like this is if you're riding a bike like this with other people who are on bikes like the Guzzi or a GS, and that's when you notice the diminished speed that they can carry. But if you're riding solo, to me, these are such a good, happy medium. You've got weight that you can manage. You chuck a bike like this down a trail, you can manage it. Okay, it's not as light as a CT110, but it's certainly not as cumbersome as a Guzzi or a GS or something like that. And so that's, I guess, where I've found myself by trying the different options, the light, the heavy, and now they're sort of stuck in the middle. I just like it. I like its potential. I like its lack of limitations, and I like the fact that, in the Himalayan's case, $4,000, or in the CRF's case, 4,800 or whatever they are, you can buy a bike that can do pretty much any journey, any adventure you want, and it's not broke the bank. It's still easy to get tyres for. It's still easy to self-service. It's not going to cost you a fortune if you damage it, break it. There's not a lot to break on them. And so I guess that's how I've arrived at this position I'm in. I've really got a fondness for the A2 compliant bikes. I really just love what they offer the motorcycle rider. But I think ultimately when it comes down to bike choice, you've got to just go with what feels right to you. You can read reviews, you can look on the forums and see what people are saying about different bikes, but ultimately a bike speaks to you in its own unique way, and it appeals to your trip and your intended purposes in its own unique way. And so I think sometimes you just got to go, that's the bike I like the look of, I like the sound of it, that's the bike I'm going to buy. And all bikes, ultimately, all three bikes here are going to suffer a compromise somewhere along the line. There is no perfect bike, there is no perfect adventure bike, and there is no such thing really as an adventure bike. We've got the sidecar down there, which I will do a video on, giving a bit more details. The sidecar down there that people went, the guys, Reese and Matt, went around the world on. That's not an adventure bike, but it's been on probably the most amazing adventure you could have. So try not to get caught up in what people are telling you should buy, and what you think you should buy. Just go with your gut, trust your instinct, and I don't know. There's not much else to say really. Whether you buy a Himalayan, a Guzzi, a CT110, or build your own sidecar, the joy is in the riding, not in the finer details of which bike you happen to be riding. So that's it. Day 3. Chip in with some comments if you've got an idea of what bike you like riding, or what bike you've got and why you think it's good or why you think it's bad. Just put it in the comments. I think it's always interesting for people to hear other people's perspectives on it. So that's it. We'll see you tomorrow. I think I'm going to talk about panniers tomorrow. Talk about the benefits or negatives of hard panniers versus soft panniers, and a few other aspects. So yeah, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. See you tomorrow. Take care. Bye.